I knew my marriage was over the night the flood sirens started screaming over our neighborhood, and my husband carried another woman's child to safety before he came back for his own daughter. People always imagine betrayal as something glamorous at first. A lipstick stain, a late-night text, a hotel receipt left in a jacket pocket. But sometimes betrayal looks like muddy water climbing your front steps while your 15-year-old daughter sits at the kitchen table trying not to panic because her blood sugar is dropping, and your husband is across the street loading somebody else's life into the back of his truck. I can still hear that weather alert buzzing through the house. I can still see the lights flicker once, twice, then die. I can still feel the little insulated medical bag in my hands, the one I kept packed with Lily's insulin, test strips, glucose tablets, and emergency juice boxes. And I can still remember looking through our rain-streaked front window and seeing Ethan, my husband of 23 years, with his arms around another woman's son, like that was where his first instinct lived. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. My name is Rachel Whitmore. I'm 51 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed in preparation. I believed in lists, backup plans, labeled folders, emergency savings, and checking the weather radar before I left the house. I worked as a fraud analyst for a regional bank outside Nashville, which meant I spent my days looking at patterns other people missed. Strange transfers, suspicious signatures, tiny inconsistencies that usually turned out to mean something much bigger. The irony of that has never been lost on me. I could detect financial lies spread across 6 accounts and 3 states, but I somehow failed to see the lies sleeping beside me every night. Ethan and I met when we were both 27. He was charming in that relaxed Southern way that made people feel instantly comfortable around him. He sold commercial roofing and knew how to talk to contractors, waitresses, school principals, and old men at gas stations with equal ease. I was quieter, more deliberate. We balanced each other, or at least I thought we did. We built a good life on paper. We bought a brick house on Hawthorne Lane in a town where people still decorated for every holiday and waved from their driveways. We had one daughter, Lily, after years of trying, and one heartbreaking miscarriage I don't talk about much even now. Lily was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 11, which turned our lives into a clockwork of carb counts, insulin timing, midnight alarms, and backup supplies. She handled it all better than most adults would have. She was smart, artistic, and funny in a dry, sideways way that always caught me off guard. She played piano beautifully. She loved old movie soundtracks and thrift store sweaters and the elderly beagle we'd had since she was in elementary school. His name was Walter. He was 13, half-blind, deeply stubborn, and absolutely convinced every blanket in the house belonged to him. For a long time, we were the kind of family people probably envied from the outside. Not flashy, not perfect, just steady. Then Melissa Grant moved into the gray house across the street. She was 42, recently divorced, pretty in a polished, effortless way I never quite trusted, and she had a 10-year-old son named Owen, who worshipped Ethan almost immediately. Ethan was good with kids when the situation was easy, tossing a football in the yard, helping with a bike tire, explaining how to use a power drill safely. He liked being seen as dependable. He liked gratitude that came without history attached to it. At first, I thought nothing of it. Neighbors help neighbors. That's what people do. Then I started noticing how often Ethan had reasons to be over there. Melissa's porch light needed replacing. Owen needed help with a science project. Her garage door was sticking. Her ex-husband hadn't come through on something. She felt nervous at night alone in the house. Her gutters were blocked. Her smoke detector kept chirping. There was always something. And always Ethan was available. Meanwhile, Lily had a winter piano showcase Ethan missed because a client dinner ran late. He forgot her endocrinologist follow-up appointment, even though it was on the family calendar. He stopped asking about the small details of her life. Not in one dramatic, cruel way, more like a man gradually stepping backward through a doorway while trying not to be noticed. I noticed. I just didn't name it. That's the part I've had to forgive myself for. You can live beside the truth for months if you are busy enough, tired enough, and emotionally invested enough in not seeing it clearly. By early spring, Ethan had developed new habits. He took his phone everywhere. He started turning the screen face down. He got oddly defensive over harmless questions. He bought better cologne. He volunteered to run errands at night. If I asked where he'd been, his answers came too quickly, as if he had rehearsed the casualness of them. Still, I said nothing. Not because I was weak, because Lily had finals, and Walter's arthritis was getting worse, and my department was in the middle of an internal audit. And sometimes, women delay a disaster not because they don't see it coming, but because they need to get through Thursday first. The flood came in May. It had been raining for 3 days straight, the kind of relentless Tennessee rain that turns creeks into threats and backyards into swamps. Our neighborhood sat near a low stretch of river, and while we'd had flood warnings before, we'd never had anything serious. Not like this. That Friday afternoon, the county alerts started coming faster. Roads closing, water rescue teams already deployed. Avoid travel. Prepare to evacuate if instructed. I left work early and went home to charge every medical device Lily might need. I filled thermoses with ice for her insulin. I moved photo albums to higher shelves. I packed 2 duffel bags and set them by the front door. Lily came home from school pale and jittery, the way she got when she was scared but trying to act normal. I checked her blood sugar twice in 30 minutes. Ethan texted that he was helping a client secure equipment and would be home soon. When he finally pulled into the driveway, the rain was coming down so hard it looked white. He ran in, soaped through, and I felt a flash of relief so sharp it almost made me dizzy. "Good," I said. "Take the bags to the truck. I'm getting Lily's numbers back up before we leave." He barely looked at me. Instead, he glanced through the front window toward Melissa's house. Her porch light was blinking. Her front yard was already half underwater. "Melissa called," he said. "Her basement is taking on water. Owen's freaking out." I stared at him. Lily is low. "I'll be right back." "Ethan," but he was already pulling on his hood and heading for the door. Lily was sitting at the table with her juice box, trying to peel the straw wrapper with shaky fingers. "Mom," she said quietly, "I'm okay." That sentence nearly broke me, because children say they're okay when they can see the adults around them are failing. I got the straw in for her. I made her drink. I grabbed the medical cooler, our documents folder, Walter's leash, and my purse all at once. Then I looked out the window again. And there was my husband, not on his way back to us. He was in Melissa's yard, ankle deep in floodwater, lifting Owen into the cab of his truck while Melissa stood beside him with her hand on his arm like it belonged there. I don't know if they saw me in the window. If they did, neither of them reacted. Something inside me went very still. Not shattered, still. Like a judge taking her seat. The evacuation order came 5 minutes later. By then, the street was chaos. Car doors slamming, dogs barking, neighbors shouting over the weather. I got Lily into the passenger seat of my SUV because I was not waiting for Ethan to remember he had a family. Walter had to be half lifted, half bribed into the back seat with an old quilt. Lily was holding the cooler with one hand and her meter with the other. As I backed out of the driveway, Ethan pounded once on my window. "Rachel, wait! Melissa and Owen need—" I looked straight at him and said, "Get in or don't." He hesitated. That was all I needed to know. I drove away with my daughter and my dog, while my husband stood in the rain, deciding which life he wanted to climb into. He made it to the shelter on his own 20 minutes later. The county had opened the high school gym as an emergency shelter. Rows of cots, wet people, crying babies, volunteers with clipboards, the smell of rain, bleach, and fear. Lily's sugar dropped again from the stress and the delay, and one of the nurses staffing the shelter had to help me stabilize her while she trembled under a scratchy red blanket. Ethan arrived carrying 2 duffel bags that did not belong to us. Melissa came in right behind him, one hand on Owen's shoulder, her mascara streaked, her face pale and helpless in a way I'm sure many people found moving. I found it clarifying. No dramatic confession happened that night. No one needed one. I watched Ethan settle them 3 cots down from us. I watched him find them dry towels. I watched him kneel beside Owen and tell him everything was going to be all right, in a voice I had not heard him use with Lily in months. My daughter, exhausted and nauseated, turned her face toward the wall and pretended not to see. But she saw. Children always see. When Walter began whining in the middle of the night, Ethan came over and crouched beside Lily's cot. "How are you doing, sweetheart?" he asked. She looked at him for maybe 2 seconds and said, "You should probably check on Owen." It was the calmest thing she could have said. It landed harder than a scream. The floodwater receded by Sunday. Our basement was damaged, but the main floor of the house was spared. Melissa's basement had taken a worse hit. For the next 48 hours, Ethan moved through our home with the awkward caution of a man who knows the ground under him is rotten. He tried to act useful. He hauled out wet boxes. He called an electrician. He bought takeout no one wanted. But every time his phone lit up, he stepped outside to answer it. On Monday morning, while Lily was still asleep and the house smelled like damp drywall and coffee, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and did what I should have done months earlier. I started checking. At first, I was looking for confirmation of the affair, nothing more. Messages, location history, shared charges, hotel receipts. I found all of that eventually, and none of it surprised me as much as I thought it would. What stunned me was the money. Small transfers at first, then larger ones. $800 here, $1,200 there. A payment labeled contractor deposit. A furniture charge from a store Ethan had never mentioned. A roofing materials invoice delivered not to a client site, but to Melissa's address. Then I found the real prize. Documents tied to a home equity draw against our house. My house. Our line of credit had been tapped for $26,000 2 months earlier. The authorization bore my digital signature. Only I had never signed it. I sat there staring at the screen while the coffee went cold beside me. That was the moment my anger changed shape. Infidelity is one kind of wound. Financial deceit is another. But using the home I paid for, the home my daughter depended on, as collateral for another woman's problems, that moved us out of heartbreak and into strategy. I printed everything. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Her name was Denise Carter, and she had an office downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and the kind of tidy desk that told me she didn't waste energy on chaos. She listened without interrupting while I walked her through the affair, the flood, the shelter, the unauthorized debt, and Lily's medical vulnerability. When I finished, she folded her hands and said, "Do not confront him until every record is backed up in 3 places." I liked her instantly. So I went home, made dinner, helped Lily with a composition she was writing for piano, gave Walter his joint medication wrapped in turkey, and spent the rest of the evening quietly building a file that could end my marriage. The confrontation happened the following Saturday. Lily was at her friend Harper's house for a movie night. Walter was snoring under the living room lamp. I asked Ethan to sit down at the dining room table. There was no folder this time. There was a stack. Bank statements, The home equity paperwork, screenshots, delivery receipts, text logs, photographs from the shelter one of our neighbors had posted online, including one where Ethan stood with Melissa and Owen, looking, to anyone with eyes, like a family unit. He looked at the first page and went white. "Rachel." "No," I said. "You can answer after I finish." So I finished. I told him I knew about Melissa. I knew about the money. I knew he had used our house to secure debt without my consent. I knew that while our daughter's blood sugar was dropping and floodwater was entering our street, he had chosen to rescue Melissa's comfort before his own child's safety. He cried. I didn't. He said Melissa had been overwhelmed. He said Owen needed stability. He said he had been trying to help. He said the loan was temporary. He said he never meant for any of this to happen. He said he loved Lily. He said he loved me too, in a damaged, confused way. I remember looking at him and thinking how often men confuse love with entitlement. You are not loving your family when you gamble their safety for your secret life. You are using them. When he finally stopped talking, I said, "You didn't fall into this. You built it." Then I told him Denise Carter would be in touch, and that from this point forward, we would discuss major matters through counsel. He asked if I was really doing this. I said, "You did this. I'm responding." The divorce took 8 months, long enough for walls to dry, for insurance adjusters to argue, for Walter to develop a dramatic preference for sleeping outside Lily's bedroom door, and for Ethan to move into a furnished townhouse 12 minutes away. Because of the unauthorized debt and the financial records, the settlement leaned heavily in my favor. I kept the house. The line of credit became his responsibility. Lily stayed with me full-time, with visits to him arranged on a schedule she helped shape herself. That part mattered to me more than anything. Children lose enough in a broken home without being told they must also surrender control over their own grief. Melissa, I should tell you, did not last. Once the fantasy had to survive under the bright fluorescent light of consequences, it burned out quickly. By the time our divorce was final, she and Ethan were already over, which felt less satisfying than you might think. There's no real pleasure in watching selfish people disappoint each other. It's just gravity. Lily recovered in her own careful way, not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily. She started writing more music. She let me repaint her room a soft green she picked herself. She began joking again. The first time I heard her laugh full-throated in the kitchen months later because Walter had stolen an entire grilled cheese off the counter, I had to turn away and pretend I was looking for a dish towel. Ethan tried with her. To his credit, he did try. Not always gracefully, not always successfully, but sincerely, I think. He came to her fall recital and sat in the back row. He didn't wave for attention. He didn't ask for anything afterward. He just listened while she played a piece so haunting and self-possessed that half the room went silent before they remembered to clap. When it was over, Lily found me first in the crowd. Then she looked past me to him, and she gave the smallest nod. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Just acknowledgement. Sometimes that is the first honest brick in a new foundation. I'm 51 now. I still work in fraud analysis. I still live in the brick house on Hawthorne Lane. The flood marks are long gone, though every spring I restock our emergency kits a little more carefully than before. Walter is slower these days and snores like a congested accordion, but every morning he still drags himself to the kitchen as if breakfast is a miracle. And in some ways, it is. Because the life I have now is quieter than the one I thought I wanted, but it is also truer. There is no guessing in it, no waiting for a man to remember where his loyalties belong, no standing at a window asking myself whether what I saw was really happening. That night taught me something I wish I had never needed to learn. When disaster comes, people do not become someone new. They reveal who they have been all along. Ethan revealed himself in floodwater and hesitation. I revealed myself in the driver's seat, one hand on the wheel, my daughter beside me, my old dog in the back, and no room left for denial. If you like this story, subscribe to my channel for more beautiful stories.